We'll come back to this in a moment. On the buses, or rather off the buses, more than 8,000 bus routes closed in just over 10 years. The number of services halved in the past 12 years. 2,000 routes cut in the last 12 months. There's a geographical breakdown, but let's just get straight into it with Graham Vidler, who's Chief Executive of the Confederation of Passenger Transport. That's a trade association acting in the bus and coach sector. Simple question with which to start, Mr. Vidler. Why? Are people not using buses in the same numbers as perhaps they did over a decade ago? Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. So that 50% reduction figure is not really a very helpful guide to the experience of passengers over the last decade or so. There's a number of flaws with counting bus routes, which mean that just about everybody tends to focus on alternative measures, like bus mileage. And total bus mileage over that period has fallen by about 19%.
Right.
So still more than we'd like, but nowhere near the 50% figure that's been cited.
Labour is saying that they would seek to give local authorities more powers to choose routes and to work at bringing back. How political an aspect do you think buses might be in next year's election, whenever it's called?
So we think buses will be very central to all parties' manifestos in the next election, and that reflects the central role that buses play in so many aspects of our national life, whether it's getting to work, getting to school, getting to the doctors, going to the shops, fueling the local economy. So it's absolutely right that all parties will be talking about them, as well as talking about regulatory control and who gets to decide what colour the buses are and where they go. It's really important that all parties talk about investing in buses as well, because real terms funding for buses has fallen by 7% over the last decade.
Lastly, how much is this a divided nation? How much is this rural versus urban, country versus town?
There is a large element where it's rural versus urban. That decline in mileage, which I mentioned, has come in two parts. So the first part before the pandemic was cash-strapped local authorities withdrawing their support from services. That was almost all concentrated in rural areas. Since the pandemic, as operators have been adjusting their networks in response to changing demand, that's been more evenly spread. Some decline in urban areas, some decline in rural areas as well.
Grateful for your time, Graham Vidler. Thank you. You're Chief Executive of the Confederation of Passenger Transport. Let's take one more call before the news on the idea of the former solicitor